fear of changes that are reordering our societies and our economy, fear of people who look different or come from a different place or worship in a different way. In some of her darkest moments, when Aung San Suu Kyi was imprisoned, she wrote an essay about freedom from fear. She said, "Fear of losing corrupts those who wield it. Fear of losing power corrupts those who wield it. And fear of the scourge of power corrupts those who are subject to it." That's the fear that you can leave behind. We see that chance in leaders who are beginning to understand that power comes from appealing to people's hopes, not people's fears. We see it in citizens who insist that this time must be different, that this time change will come and will continue. As Aung San Suu Kyi wrote, "Fear is not the natural state of civilized man." I believe that. And today, you are showing the world that fear does not have to be the natural state of life in this country. That's why I'm here. That's why I came to Rangoon. And that's why what happens here is so important, not only to this region, but to the world. Because you're taking a journey that has the potential to inspire so many people. This is a test of whether a country can transition to a better place. The United States of America is a Pacific nation, and we see our future as bound to those nations and peoples to our west. And as our economy recovers, this is where we believe we'll find enormous growth. As we've ended the wars that have dominated our foreign policy for a decade, this region will be a focus for our efforts to build a prosperous peace. Here in Southeast Asia, we see the potential for integration among nations and people. And as president, I've embraced ASEAN for reasons that go beyond the fact that I spent some of my childhood in this region, in Indonesia. Because with ASEAN, we see nations that are on the move, nations that are growing and democracies that are emerging, governments that are cooperating, progress that's building on the diversity that spans oceans and islands and jungles and cities, peoples of every race and every religion. This is what the 21st century should look like, if we have the courage to put aside our differences and move forward with a sense of mutual interest and mutual respect. And here, in Rangoon, I want to send a message across Asia. We don't need to be defined by the prisons of the past. We need to look forward to the future. To the leadership of North Korea, I've offered a choice. Let go of your nuclear weapons and choose the path of peace and progress. If you do, you'll find an extended hand from the United States of America. In 2012, we don't need to cling to the divisions of East, West, and North and South. We welcome the peaceful rise of China, your neighbor to the north, and India, your neighbor to the west. The United States will work with any nation, large or small, that will contribute to a world that is more peaceful and more prosperous and more just and more free. And the United States will be a friend to any nation that respects the rights of its citizens and the responsibilities of international law. That's the nation, that's the world that you can start to build here in this historic city. This nation that's been so isolated can show the world the power of a new beginning and demonstrate once again that the journey to democracy goes hand in hand with development. I say this knowing that there's still countless people in this country who do not enjoy the opportunities that many of you seated here do. There are tens of millions who have no electricity. There are prisoners of conscience who still await release. There are refugees and displaced peoples in camps where hope is still something that lies on the distant horizon. Today I say to you, and I say to everybody that can hear my voice, that the United States of America is with you, including those who've been forgotten, those who are dispossessed, those who are ostracized, those who are poor. We carry your story in our heads and your hopes in our hearts. Because in this 21st century, with the spread of technology and the breaking down of barriers, the front lines of freedom are within nations and individuals, not simply between them. As one former prisoner put it in speaking to his fellow citizens, politics is your job. It's not only for politicians. You know, we have an expression in the United States that the most important office in a democracy is the office of citizen. Not president, not speaker, but citizen. So as extraordinary and difficult and challenging and sometimes frustrating as this journey may seem, in the end, you, the citizens of this country, are the ones who must define what freedom means. You're the ones who are going to have to seize freedom. Because a true revolution of the spirit begins in each of our hearts. It requires the kind of courage that so many of your leaders have already displayed. The road ahead will be marked by huge challenges. And there will be those who resist the forces of change. But I stand here with confidence that something is happening in this country that cannot be reversed. And the will of the people can lift up this nation and set a great example for the world. And you will have in the United States of America a partner on that long journey. So, Jesutin Bade. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The United States is with you. I come to extend the hand of friendship. Myanmar's remarkable journey has just begun. Well, these are remarkable live pictures that you are looking at the university in Yangon in Myanmar as the U.S. President Barack Obama is making a historic visit to this country. He is the first serving American president to visit Myanmar. In this speech, he complimented political change in the country and also focused much of the speech on calling for more political reform. A little bit of a delicate balance that he had to make there. You're looking at pictures, too, of Aung San Suu Kyi, a pro-democracy icon, sitting alongside the Secretary of State there, Hillary Clinton. A short while ago, actually, President Obama and Hillary Clinton had gone to Aung San Suu Kyi's house. President Obama bowed and shook her hand, and Hillary Clinton gave her a huge hug. In this speech, President Obama quoted Aung San Suu Kyi to the global audience, focusing especially on citizens in Myanmar as well as across Asia, saying that fighting fear was really the key to success, economic and political development, and Aung San Suu Kyi really is an icon of that. President Obama also talked more about reforms, press freedom, land ownership, the rule of law, the release of political prisoners, as well as the freedom there to worship. He said America will support you every step of the way as you pursue democracy and economic development. He added, too, growth can only be created if corruption is left behind. Aung San Suu Kyi, again, live pictures, as you can see, President Obama and Hillary Clinton leaving the room, and she really is an icon in this country after having spent years under house arrest and now is the leader of the opposition. President Obama, too, focused a little bit on his own personal history in saying, my own country has taught me the power of diversity. He touched on the U.S.'s own history of discrimination, saying, once the color of my skin would have denied me the right to vote. So the point he was making is that if the U.S. can transcend such major differences, so can Myanmar. Dan Lothian is in the room here, and he watched this speech traveling with the president. Dan, what is the headline here, you think, from this speech?
Well, you know, I think you touched on it earlier where you talked about this delicate balance that the president has to do when dealing with Myanmar. First of all, essentially congratulating this country for its place in history, for some of the reforms that have already taken place, but not mincing any words when he talks specifically about what this country needs to do in order to move forward when it comes to reform. And you touched on some of those already, but I'll tick them off. He essentially had a laundry list of things like, quote, the right of people to assemble must now be fully respected. The president saying, quote, the veil of media censorship must continue to be lifted. He also added that corruption must be left behind. But the president is sort of sounding an optimistic tone. It wasn't sort of unbridled optimism, but cautious optimism, talking about, yes, we do have violence going on in this country, but that opportunity transforms ceasefires into lasting settlements. And then the president rounding out his remarks, as you pointed out, with a personal touch, talking about how in the past history that he would not have been able to vote, or would some African Americans obviously were not able to vote at one time in American history, and drawing the parallels to this country and the struggles ongoing here and how things can change. So the bottom line from the administration is that the president came here, even though there's a lot of criticism about whether it was too soon for the president to come here, but they wanted to essentially prod and encourage the progress that has already been made, but still making that point that it is a very long journey. Zane?
CNN's White House correspondent Dan Lothian traveling with the president, reporting from the university in Yangon. Thanks so much. Let's return you now to programming already in progress.